Hello, and thank you for tuning into DSL Online. This lesson is going to continue the talk that we had in the last video. It's going to continue talking about the names of the keys. We're going through the French system, and we are going to cover the remainder of those keys. Yeah, the ones that you're going to be using with your pinky, and there's some that we're going to be using with your palm, and the side of your fingers, and we're going to go over all of those. So stay tuned. Here we go. So last video, we talked about how to hold the saxophone and the names of some of those keys using the French key systems. So let's review that real quick. Let's look at the chart. The top key, remember that is going to be called X. Then following that we have 1, then bis. And a quick disclaimer, I said in the last video you can call it B. After thinking about that in more detail, I think calling it B would just get confusing. So we're just going to call it bis. Okay, so we have X, 1 bis, and then we have 2, 3, and then on the right hand, we're going to have 4, 5, and 6. And remember, your thumb just rests in the hook. Your right thumb just rests in the hook on the back of the saxophone. Okay, so let's go over some of these new keys now. And to do this, I'm going to pull up our guide right here. It's pretty cool, right? Yeah, so let's get into it. Okay, so if you look at the chart here, the first thing that comes up is the 8VA. What does 8VA mean? That just literally means octave. And that's the name of this key right here. The one that we're going to be resting our thumb on, but not necessarily pressing, right? Just resting our thumb on. And this, remember, is the thumb rest, which you have on the charts right underneath that. You have thumb rest and then octave key. So now we know the octave key. We know the thumb rest. What are these right here? Yours might look a little different than mine. Some of them are just made of metal. Mine's wrapped with tape and cork. I apologize about that. It doesn't mean anything different than yours. They work the same way. Okay, so what are they? How do you use them? Let's cover it. Okay, these are your palm keys. All 3 of them are called your palm keys. And why are they called the palm keys? That's because while you're playing the saxophone, and if you want to use those, you press them down with your palm, right? And they all 3 have individual names. So let's go over those real quick. Closest to the thumb rest, right? Starting from right here, the one that you can see the most clear, that's going to be called C1. Okay? Then the next one, it's not the lowest one, it's the highest one actually. That's going to be called C2. And then the longest one, the third one, 1, 2, 3, this is going to be called C4. C4. So then underneath the palm keys, right, we already talked about the octave key, we talked about C1, C2, and C3. Directly under them is this table that we talked about in the previous video that your pinky is just going to sit on, right? And this table is 4 different buttons that your pinky, your left-hand pinky, can press. And that's why you have all of these little rollers in there, is so your pinky can move with ease between all of them, right? Yeah, and so those are all different buttons that all activate different keys. And the names of these are going to be top, A flat, okay? And then the most outside one, that is going to be called C sharp or D flat. Sorry, when I said this is A flat, it's A flat or G sharp, you can call it. G sharp or A flat. And then C sharp or D flat, probably C sharp more commonly called. Then inside, this is going to be B. And then this big one at the lowest point, that is going to be called your B flat. So that covers the left hand, right? Now all we have to do is cover the right hand. Okay, so you remember you remember we already talked about in the previous video these 3 keys, right? These pearls. That's 4, 5, and 6, right? And then our pinky rests here, and on the back we have the thumb rest, right? That's where your thumb sits. But then in between, we've got these 3. Your fingers don't hit it like this, right? Our fingers are just here, but we can kind of hit them with our finger like that. The top one is C3. Remember when we were talking about the palm keys, we had C1, C2, and then for some reason it skipped C3 and it went straight to C4. This is C3. And we'll talk more about that when we start using them, why it's called C3 and why it skips that order. Okay? And then, when you're going down, the middle one then, we're going to switch consonants. This is going to be, instead of C, this is now a T. And this is T, C. And then we have T, trill, A. And that's the bottom one. And as I already kind of talked about, the way you hit these 3 right here is going to be by just simply keeping your hand in place. Fingers aren't moving, thumb's not moving, but I'm just going to pivot my hand a little bit, right? Okay, so then working our way down, we have these 2 keys, right? Some of you won't have this one, this top one. That's okay. It's just a specialty key. It allows the saxophone to go a little bit higher, and it comes really more on specific models and a little bit higher, more advanced saxophones. This key is called C5. And then this one that all of you will have, this is called TF, or fork. So the way you press these 2 keys, remember we talked about these 3 using the side of your hand. These ones, you know, you just use like our fingers are just sitting on these pearls. You will actually just move your finger to hit these alternative keys. So if you want to use the fork key, you will just use your ring finger to move it, to push it. And if you want to use C5, you will use your middle finger. Then last but not least, in the last video we talked about this table that our right hand pinky will sit on, and it's got rollers, just like our other table, and these are 2 different keys that our pinky can pivot between. And the top one is going to be called D sharp or E flat, and the bottom one is going to be called C. Now, I realize I just threw a ton of information at you. At this point, you might be panicking or you might be worried. You're like, how the heck am I going to remember all of this? Don't worry, okay? You just continue to study these, go over the chart, make sure you know the names of them, but also keep in mind that this is going to be a progressive course. We're not going to be using all of these keys immediately, and when I think it's important to know these keys or to talk about them, then we'll go over them before we start to use them. So when learning how to use TF comes into play, we will talk about using TF. I'll bring it up. And as the course progresses, you will naturally start to just use these key names naturally, and it'll just become more habitual eventually. So just keep at it, keep studying them, and I will also release a quiz. If you would like to use that, I will be quizzing you with answers, and there'll be a video just going over some of the names and just being quizzed. Just a fun way to practice remembering some of the key names. So look forward to that as well. So that about sums up this video. As always, thanks for watching and happy practicing. Take care. How are you? How are you?